All right, so let's get started. Today's webinar, Efficiency Unleashed, Cutting Time, Waste, and Freight Broker Operations. We're here with Parade, Turvo, and Vineline Logistics. So let's get started. All right, we have Steve, the president of Vineline Logistics, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. Yeah, like she said, Steve Lyons, Vineline Logistics and president, co-owner, and been here, just celebrated 10 years.
Yep, my name is Anthony Saratelli, Director of Customer Success here at Turvo. I've been with Turvo for about 3 years. I like to think that I have one of the most fun jobs in supply chain technology. I get to chat with my fellow customer success professionals like Becca, and thought leaders like Steve, who I feel fortunate enough to call a friend at this point.
Awesome.
I think that's fair, right, Steve? Can we be friends?
Oh, yeah. We're getting close to being best friends. But we're not there yet. We're getting close, though.
And I'm Becca Kaplan. I'm a senior customer success manager here at Parade. I've been with Parade for a year and I've been in logistics for 3 years, and I support a large number of our broker customers. Steve, if you want to talk about Vineline out in Grand Rapids.
Yeah, so Vineline Logistics, based right here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So got a nice little photo there of a river that runs right through our city. So love being here. We've been growing a team now for the last few years in the downtown area. Very much focused on dedicated service to our customers. We're more of a boutique third-party logistics company, and our customers really get to experience a higher level of, I would call it, customer service and attention and a dedication to what their needs are. And been fortunate enough to, over the last couple of years, really enhancing our technology and the tech stack with Parade alongside of us, as well as Turvo, and have really seen the advantages both internally, but then also our customers, carriers, and vendors have also been able to experience a lot of upside as well in the experience. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. And then a little bit, Anthony, if you can take it away on the Turvo side.
Absolutely. So Turvo is a collaborative platform for logistics and supply chain providers. And we're bringing a modern approach to transportation and supply chain management. We have customers that range from third-party logistics companies, logistics services providers, shippers, truckers, even warehousing companies. We're going to focus more today on that third-party or LSP space, but ultimately we're helping our customers and their partners digitize and modernize their supply chain experience.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So what are we hearing in terms of market conditions? And Steve, Anthony, jump on in. Like, before we dig into how Vineline operates between Turvo and Parade, what's the given state of the market? Some of the uncertainty that we're seeing in the industry. We're hearing a lot about freight volume, tighter margins. Can you lay out some of the current challenges that you're both hearing and seeing in the market right now?
Yeah, I mean, I can kick it off. I think for definitely over the last 12 months, it's no secret that the market has been labeled a number of different things. Tough being one of them. Soft is something that we've heard a lot. Freight rates are starting to bottom out, both on the dry van, reefer, and other various spaces. And I think there's been an abundance of capacity in the market coming off of the rush of COVID. A lot of new trucking companies entered the market, and I think there was a lot of chaos during that time, and rates were, as everyone knows, very sky high. So that chaos created a lot of bottlenecks in the supply chain, and I think everyone was reacting as best as they could. And so now we're at this point where things are starting to normalize a little bit. And as they do, I think it's critical that we are able to provide the right capacity for our shippers, not just being able to find them a truck, but the right truck for the load at hand. And as shippers are starting to be much more interested in, call it, asset-based companies, I think for the brokerages out there that are able to work closely with their carrier partners, they have the unique ability to act as an asset-based provider, but with all the benefits of being a brokerage. And so we're starting to see where the closer we are able to identify where we're strong in our network, we're able to provide that to the shippers and really give them an experience that makes it appear as though these are trucks that work with us day in and day out. And so I think as the market starts to call it bounce back, it's going to be critical for brokerages to be performing as efficiently as they can and offer the best experience they can. So I think we're starting to see a bounce back, but a lot of analysts there's a lot of noise around all over LinkedIn and different data sources, but that's a little bit of what we've been hearing, and feeling better about kind of where things are going. So
yeah, there's been a lot of analysts at, I think it was Uber Freight, saying that it'll level out soon. So there's hope at the end of the tunnel.
I think from the technology side of things, or my perspective on it, Steve, you hit the nail on the head, but early in the year, there was still so much uncertainty in the marketplace. Like, when is it going to stop? When is it going to bottom out? What's going to happen? And I think what I'm seeing is it's at least normalized a little bit. And we're starting to see folks react in a way that you kind of know what to do. We're seeing a lot of companies are kind of in that wallet share defense mode, just really trying to hang on to the freight that they do have, and finding any way to grow in these conditions can be a challenge. One of the things that I have seen from our customers that are successfully growing through these challenging conditions is really taking this time in the marketplace to invest in a strategy behind their technology. When the market's hot, you're like, I don't really have time to take a step back and think about adding to my tech stack, or maybe sharpening up how I use my current technology. But knowing that these things are cyclical, our customers that are taking this opportunity to focus on their strategy with their technology for the future are already seeing gains and successes from that.
With all of that in mind, of kind of where we're at currently in the market and market trends and what we're seeing, let's go back a little bit in time. Let's take it back and let's understand, Steve, what got you started with capacity management? What's the why? Why did you choose capacity management to complement your current tech stack? What was going on back then, and what was compelling about adding Parade to your tech stack?
Yeah, when we first were looking into Parade, one of you call it the why, or why are we going towards this? I think we were in a position where I didn't feel as though we were leveraging our carrier network in the way that we should. Our data suggested that we were using carriers on a low volume frequency. I think, we'd fall in line with a lot of growing brokerages to where they find themselves using carriers a lot one time. And I knew that there was a better way, right? I wanted to better understand and centralize the lanes that these carriers specifically like to run. Better have call it a template or an outline of what information we wanted to know about said carrier, especially during the onboarding process. I think without Parade or pre-Parade, there was a lot of people knew who their trucks were, or maybe they had it written in a spreadsheet, or they wrote it down somewhere, or it's in their email somewhere. And I think being able to bring all that information and centralize it in one location has been really cool to not only have that solution, but then also to see what it has done to how we're leveraging our network and how we're reusing carriers more often and engaging with them in a way that only highlights the things that they want to see. So we've found carriers in our network that we didn't do as much business with, that we've grown with them and done more with, just because now we're exposing them to more loads that they may not have otherwise seen. And so where it was very manual, of course, there was a lot of time and opportunity wasted. This really has been a solution for our carrier sales and operations teams to put carrier information in the right place in a way that we can leverage it and not lose the value of that onboarding call or that follow-up call. So it's been great. I think we've really found that being able to put that carrier information somewhere that can be leveraged has been huge for our business.
Yeah, that the carrier reuse piece is definitely a big one, but like putting all of that different carrier data into one place and then having all of that in front of your team. This carrier likes to move, these lanes, and having that fed back to you. That's awesome to hear.
Mm-hmm. Steve, you mentioned, and really Becca, you mentioned this as well too, but you talked a lot about that carrier reuse and building that network. Steve, as a business leader and a business owner, I mean, how impactful and important is it to you to know that a tool like Parade is enabling your team to focus more on that relationship-driven activity? Because we know it's valuable from the standpoint of bottom line, but just knowing that you can watch the team flow and they're not wasting their time stripping out loads from load board XYZ. We won't mention names. What does that mean? What does that mean to you as a business owner?
Well, I think relationships are everything in business. And I think, we think about it on the customer side and a brokerage, but at the end of the day, it's both sides. It has to be. And so you're only as good as your network is. And you need to be able to understand what your strong lanes are. And so to be able to identify that within Parade and know the carriers in our network who we can leverage is critical. And so it's helping us clarify who we should be calling and talking more with and engaging with, and for our team to be able to dial that in and use their time extremely wisely is man, I can't even try to translate that into a dollar amount value, but be able to call somebody on the phone and get to know them more out of follow-up phone calls and their family and their drivers and what they're trying to accomplish. And it's really cool to walk out of the bullpen and hear long conversations that our team's having with trucking companies. And it's not always just about the load. It goes further than that. So as you get to know a carrier more and more, you start to see them looking for ways of how they can provide you value. And they're proactively trying to find out how they can do better for you. And when you just use carriers once or twice or what have you, even off a load board, it's very transactional. And we want to get away from that. And so it's a big deal. It really is. Relationships are key.
Yeah.
And Becca, reel me in if I'm jumping ahead here, but I was kind of leading the witness a little bit. And from my perspective, this is why a partnership like Parade and Turvo makes so much sense. What we're about as technology companies is enabling our customers, and not just the customers, but the people, boots on the ground, drive value by focusing on the right activities and letting the technology drive automation in those things that really just become time waste.
Yeah. That's definitely a big value add that we offer at Parade, right? Like the more data that we're getting, the better the outcome our customers are having, the more time that they're saving. And then back to Steve's point, like they have more time to build those meaningful relationships with the people that they work with. So
to piggyback off of that, right? In our mission statement, we want to balance technology with the human element, right? And so I think what Parade allows us to do is it does give us a platform to put the right information in the right place so it can be leveraged, right? Making sure these loads that match the criteria of the carrier and their interests, is something that can be automated. But then it allows, after, call it a few loads, or maybe we see a carrier take 5 loads and they booked them all through our digital booking site. We can call and say, thank you. We appreciate you accepting those loads. What else can we do for you? Is your profile up to date? How was the experience? And it just allows us to have a different conversation that is really where you want your salespeople or your operations people to have. You want them to have those so that they can build those relationships. And I think Parade does a very nice job at balancing those two things, because we're talking about what the market conditions are. I'm not seeing that people want to remove that human element yet. I think it has to be balanced. And I think Parade and Turvo in alignment has really allowed us to focus on that relationship more. And so.
Man, I would argue that the human element in this industry never goes away. I'm a big believer, like you said, Steve, that every business is the relationship business, but maybe nowhere more so than the space that we're in. It's such a relationship-based business, and technology enabling folks to focus on their relationships is what we're all about.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
So to kind of further the conversation of how all three parties work together and Parade and Turvo together for this unified tech stack, right? So can we go a little bit more in depth about how these work together for Vineline?
So maybe if we can, Steve, just to start, talk a little bit about what led you to Turvo, because you've been with us for a few years now. Just for context and color, talk about the journey of how you got to Turvo.
Yeah. So, when we were looking at a new TMS, there was a few must-haves, and one of them, of course, this was we've been with Turvo about 2.5 years now. So one of them that we really wanted to make sure that we had was the cloud-based platform, right? We wanted the ability for the parties that we work with, the external parties, to be able to log in and collaborate with us. So if it's on the customer side, we wanted to be able to give them a portal to gain access to their shipment information and call it documentation and tracking and billing info, all of those different things, right, under one spot. And then also the carriers being able to log in and enter in driver information and upload their PODs or lumper receipts or all these different things. We wanted to be able to collaborate. And so that was critical. But then otherwise as well was we needed a platform that was going to integrate well with other technology providers, because at the core of it, we knew Turvo was going to be the center point. It was going to be the base. And anything that we plugged into it, we wanted it to communicate with it well. So in the realm of Parade, right, we felt as though we really needed to better leverage our carrier network and encourage carrier reuse and retention, saving time, enhancing margins, all these things that go hand in hand with carrier management. And the beauty of it is that it plugged into Turvo incredibly well. And so, I think as Turvo as the center point, it's just done a fantastic job at, once we can get the information, once we can drive more, call it carrier activity, call it quotes or new carrier onboards or whatever they may be. By the time it gets to Turvo, we're executing at the highest level, and our team is using Turvo to really drive the customer experience from that point forward. And so anything that can flow into Turvo in a more efficient manner, which is what Parade allows, it just enhances it. And so I think that's part of why we went with Turvo, was just, of course, that collaborative mindset, being able to have it be a unified platform, but then also what can be added into it along the way, what can help make it more powerful, and is the team at Turvo going to help us and hold our hand through that process? And it's been a great experience, because they want to make sure that we're able to do that. So
yeah, and you touched on collaboration. I love when I hear that word. That's our favorite word at Turvo. It's in our DNA. And from the partnership perspective, Parade and our network of partners, really, it fits into that collaborative strategy, right? Like at the start of this call, I said Turvo is a collaborative platform. And part of that means that when we have best in breed solutions like Parade that we have a seamless integration with, we want that user experience to be seamless, right? So maybe talk a little bit about how this integration works and how it flows and what the experience is like on the day-to-day for a user who is leveraging the combination of Turvo and Parade.
Yeah. Well, I think, Parade is all encompassing from a carrier information standpoint, right? It is a database. And so it's not just a database like a query, right? It needs to be leveraged. It means the automation needs to put the right loads in front of the carriers at the right time. So when a carrier goes and puts in a quote, right? So when we drive in or we think about quoting, it's where is the load being call it made publicized or solicited. And so there's all these different options beside a Parade. We can keep it private to our own load board for the carriers that are already in network, or we can expose them to a particular load board. So there's both in network and out of network quoting, and they can come through by email or different sources, and it pools all the quoting under one roof. So our team can then see inbound quotes, but they're not just seeing it in Parade, they can still live inside of Turvo and see the quotes coming in, whether it's an in-network carrier or out-of-network carrier. And so to be able to have that information flow directly into Turvo just kind of shows you the efficiency behind the integration, and that's helped tremendously. And so then what our team can do is they can accept a quote if they see it as a great fit and it's aligned with what we're looking for and all those different things. Then as soon as we accept the quote, and that can be in Parade or in Turvo, it's going to send the carrier a rate confirmation, right? So then we're shooting a rate confirmation to the carrier. Our team is following up to gather the remaining information that we need to dispatch it accordingly. And from there, in Turvo, we're executing from everything from issuing the driver Turvo application for tracking and extending the shipment information to the driver, being able to share documents and text the driver and all these different things. And we can share a shipment link with the customer. So it really, what it does is Parade really allows us to handle the front end procurement side, get the loads in front of the right carriers. And then once they do provide a quote and accept it, or in some cases, we allow the carriers to book it right away. We have a great relationship with that carrier, and we want them to be able to have that access to booking the load right off our board. So, to be able to have that fluent procurement side directly into Turvo, and that Turvo take it over from there, our team can really live inside the TMS. And that's the kind of the beautiful part of the integration is our team doesn't need to jump in and out of Turvo very often. And I think the more that our team can stay inside the TMS and not have to toggle back and forth between screens, that goes with that time savings, but also it's just a better experience for our staff.
Yeah.
That they don't have a ton of tabs open and jump back and forth. And so that's part of the great part about the integration, and they work fluently. And I think we just want to be sure that we're setting our team up for success on the carrier sales side. And Parade absolutely does that. So
you ever think back to what your life was like before you had Parade and Turvo? I mean, the title of our webinar today is around minimizing waste, right? Like it's just garbage time that you would spend bouncing back and forth between screens and reading through a list and dialing and clicking. Do you think back to those days ever? And does it give you like
yeah, all the time. I tell my team, right? So I've been after 10 years of doing this and starting out, as hopefully most people in the brokerage space have been at long enough. They all were part of some level of cradle to grave, or they had to start out with the cold calling or
carrier pack on a fax machine.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm going to sound old for a second. I mean, we were being faxed orders, right? Yeah. And then we'd call the 5-10 carriers, whatever that we knew that likes that region or that lane or whatever it was, and calling, right? And getting either here's my quote or writing down the quote. And it's so fragmented, right? And I think since what COVID did during that time was it exploded the technological advancements in our industry. And there's some names that absolutely stand out. We're on this webinar talking about Parade and Turvo, and I truly believe that both have stood out as really coming out of that time as being some of the strongest in this space. And so it's just amazing where things used to be so fragmented and information would be all over the place, and it's stored in their emails and, like I said, notebooks or spreadsheets, and now we can just put this information in the right place. And ultimately what we want to do is we want to share it with the right carriers as quick as possible so that they're aware and can plan. Because from what I remember from doing it way back when is the difference of 2 hours can mean either the truck's available or the truck's not. And to get the information out as quickly as possible to those that you want to see it. I mean, I wish I had that. But I'm just glad they do we do everything we can here to set our team up for success. And I mean, I will honestly say at this point, we can't run our business at this point without Parade and Turvo. So that's the type of partners that you want to find. And I think our team is all in on both.
Well, sure. That's where we've had so much fun together over the 2.5 years that you've been on board is just, I know that it's so integral to your strategy, but to watch Vineline grow from where it was when you took over to now you've built an awesome brand. You've built a successful company. You're tech forward, you're a thought leader. And it's like, this is really fun to go through this stuff together.
Yeah. And again, it all goes back to, there's one thing that I don't want technology to do in our business, and I'm not prepared to, or like you said before, I don't think I ever really wanted to. I don't want technology to completely replace the human element. I want those who are working within our business to use their time to develop relationships. And that still requires a call and in-face a person, but a lot of the operational tasks of finding a carrier that likes a certain lane and loads are going in the system that match that, and they can identify those and they can accept them and run them and let the system truly provide the carrier with what they need when they need it. I mean, that goes along with the do more with less. It's refocusing our attention, and that's critical. So the technology that we look to utilize here, we want people to be able to do more with less, and both of these allow them to do that, which is great. Again, it's what I wish I would have had. I still will jump in there and call it book some freight or get a carrier underneath the load and go through the whole process. I have no problem doing any of that. I enjoy it from time to time, of course.
Gotta make sure you
scratch that itch, if you will.
Yeah.
It's just like, wow, this, if I had this when I was 5-6 years ago,
yeah,
I don't know how humble I'd be. I think I'd be doing, I think I would have been pretty good.
Well, they say it happens for a reason, Steve.
Yeah.
It is interesting to think about how COVID like really forced the digitalization of the industry. It's an interesting point. The next piece I want to talk on, that I want to touch on, we've talked about this at a high level, and I want to get a little bit more granular of that actual day-to-day experience of a frontline rep using both Turvo and Parade on just a regular day. So Steve, if you can walk us through that.
Yeah. So, there's kind of a whole life cycle of a load, right? And I think it starts with the initiation of the load at the very start of creating the shipment in Turvo, right? Because we can only put on our board what loads are real. And so I think the front end process of getting the load into Turvo, a lot of our customers is done so by EDI. So the shipment gets entered into Turvo electronically. It gets transitioned over into Turvo. Those loads all will flow into Parade. Okay, so everything that shows up on our available load board is going to push over into Parade. And so once those loads are in Parade, really the carrier network that we have that's already in network has visibility and access to that. They can go in and they can review the loads, or they can wait for the daily digests of the loads that follow their criteria, their parameters that they've set in their carrier profile. And so our team will be not only having that in the background, right? The carriers are doing some of the work, but they're also going through and looking at recommended matches, direct matches, inbound quotes. And so as the carrier team is working on loads, they're able to be inside of Parade and navigate through some of the available carriers that fit that particular load. So it might be a carrier that's got a load or a truck posted on a load board that matches the criteria. It might be an email that we've been sent with all of the different available trucks, right? So we have an email where all carriers that we work with will send their available truck list, and Parade will digest that information and make it available capacity in our network. And if there's a match for that, then that'll show up as a direct match in Parade that gives us the ability to send them a quote or a load offer or along those lines, and they can accept that, and we can send them a rate con. I do want to dive in and talk about with the rep experience is that front end. So when we onboard a new carrier, one of the first things our carrier rep will do, we'll talk with the carrier dispatch, whoever the main contact is, and fill out their profile with them. What are your preferred lanes? Where do you like to go? What loads do you want to be notified of? What loads do you not want to be notified of? If we got a carrier that's on the phone, like I do not like going to Florida, which this time of year, inbound reefer from Florida, not all that great. So maybe they don't want to hear about loads out of Florida. And so we can exclude that. We don't want them to get information. We don't want to have them get spam. So that whole front end conversation that our carrier reps get to have with that carrier is making sure that their profile is up to date and that whatever we send them is not going to be considered spam. It's in alignment with what they are wanting. And then you have the carriers that are already in our network. They'll call and they'll make sure that the profile is up to date. Maybe there's a change in a dispatch contact. Maybe they have a new lane, or they're sending 5 trucks out to an area that they weren't sending them to before. And we want to be able to make sure that we leverage that and offer them loads out of that region that they weren't at one time running into. So now we can notify them of loads that that may be in alignment with those trucks. So there's a lot of that, like in Parade, we're filling out the profiles, and they're doing that on a daily basis. But ultimately as well, it's navigating the quoting, right? They can see the inbound quote requests. They come through by email, and they can see them in Turvo, and there's a lot of different ways that they can process those quotes and be able to call and follow up and do all that. It's really ingesting a tremendous amount of data on a daily basis that helps really drive our business. We have so much analytics now that we can see from our digital booking to carrier rep activity to just a variety of things that Becca is much more fluent in, because she does a great job regularly letting us know where we stand, but it is available and reporting on a regular basis. So yeah, I'd say that's a lot of what they're doing on a daily basis. And then once the actual quote request is approved, they can live in Turvo from that point forward all the way through the track and trace process till the final settlement process. And I think that is great. The more they can kind of refocus their attention from an operational perspective back into Turvo is good.
You know, Steve, you touched on something that I think is really, really important to this whole picture. You were talking about Parade enables you to take waste away from your carrier network, right? Like a lot of what we've talked about so far was, how does your tech stack help your team within its 4 walls run more efficiently? How do you take some of that garbage time off their desks? But you mentioned a tool that's allowing your carrier's day to be more efficient. And I think that that's so much in line with what we're all doing together here, where there's tools in Turvo that allow you to make your shippers' lives better. There's tools in Turvo that make your lives better. With Parade added on, you're streamlining the carrier experience. So much of what you've been able to build within Vineline as an organization, you're providing an experience to your whole network that is very efficient. And that's really important to touch on. And kudos to you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I think, we don't want, like I said, we don't want to be sending anything to any carrier that's considered spam. It's just going to go to a junk box. They're not going to review it. And we don't want to have to call an unsubscribe button on any of the bottom of our emails. We want them to see loads that they want to see, and based on the criteria that they provided us with. And to be able to have a carrier team that can have that conversation with carrier and be able to remove a lane that they no longer run, or add a lane that they now would like to run. Maybe they're trying to grow out of a certain network. We want to provide them with opportunities out of that area that maybe they weren't interested in before. And that'll drive, the more alignment we can have with our carrier network, the more engagement we can get, the more carrier reuse we can have. And that's really what we're trying to accomplish on the carrier sales side, right? I mean, the better the relationship we can build, a lot of that's going to come from consistency with the business that we're offering, and the more reuse we have, it's going to build a better foundation at our business level, and we can scale off of that.
Well, it's like we've talked a lot about this being the relationship business, and it just sounds like your technology is so interwoven into who Vineline is that the user experience of your tech stack is part of that relationship.
Absolutely. I mean, we went kind of all in on wanting to build the best possible tech stack we could. And we did that during most of the, call it, COVID season, and it's paid dividends, right? It was a chaotic time, but but it's paid dividends. We have created alongside of Turvo at the center of it all, we've been able to plug in tools like Parade throughout kind of the life cycle of the load in different areas, which has made it so that Turvo is so fluent in the process and how we execute. Like I said, it's partners like Parade and giving us a niche strength in this area. It just has helped us build that foundation that we can scale off of, but then that do more with less mentality. It's making sure that our team isn't having to focus on those minute details that can be automated and really at this point don't need to be touched all that much. Technology played the critical role. I would say that.
Steve, can you talk a little bit about how this has changed your carrier rep load procurement, and then if there's any other key benefits that maybe we haven't touched on yet that you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, it goes without saying that carrier reuse has increased, and that's something that I really, really like to see. It's who are our core carriers? Let's make sure that we are looking to expand that relationship and offer more freight that's in alignment with them. We get asked by shippers all the time, what are your strong lanes? I mean, we weren't able to really truly identify that from a capacity management standpoint, and to be able to source those strong lanes in our network based on the capacity that we have. I mean, now we can actually go to a shipper with our strongest lanes. And I mean, and that's what's helping us in, call it, this softer, more difficult market, is you need to be specific in what you want. You can't be generalized and say you can do absolutely everything. And we really want to make sure that a shipper knows where we're strong, and it allows us to do that. So definitely carrier reuse from an efficiency standpoint, without a doubt. But then alongside of that is their loads per day, or call it books per day or loads per day, has increased. So the carrier reps, completely manual prior to Parade, I would say, Becca, you have our numbers. I would say our team's doing at least twice as many loads per day per person. As long as they're utilizing utilizing Parade in the correct manner, where they're keeping the profiles up to date and they're setting everything up on the front end, you can see the value, and they can walk into the office sometimes having multiple loads booked because there were loads available. The carriers that had Book Now capabilities were able to go in and book the loads, and rate confirmations were sent from Turvo. And so they can hit the ground running as soon as they get here. And from a carrier sales perspective, you can have revenue in your name with a carrier that you've done business with, and having loads booked before you even sit down in your seat. And I think that's something that I wish I would have certainly had years ago, is that ability to, even if you're not sitting in the chair, the carriers that you're working with who want that load can access it and can book it, and get the rate confirmation, which is amazing. So that's a huge advantage, is the load count per day, carrier reuse. And then I would say efficiency through how many quotes that we get. I mean, we're digesting all of that information. We weren't able to store quotes like that before. So every inbound quote is stored, and from the source in which it's coming from, whether it's by email or a load board or a call that somebody, an inbound call, everything's being stored in one section. And then all of that gets pushed over into Turvo as well. So I think just the sheer nature of not having to write every single thing down or retyping or trying to remember, it's that information is all being centralized and recorded. And so again, it's allowing the carrier rep just to move forward in the process, and things are documented, and we're not losing the value on that. But even when they're not sitting in the seat, their carriers can still engage, and we're capturing all that data. So, which, as you can imagine, you can always be on as a carrier sales rep or a freight broker, or whatever label you want to particularly put on it, we don't want to burn people out. And that's one of our values is endurance over burnout. And this tool allows our staff to have more endurance. So alongside the efficiency, it's just not burning them out. It's putting the right things in the right place. So that we have the data to support call it the efficiency and the counts. It's gotten better and better over time. So it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah. The data to back it up too.
Yep.
Awesome. I don't know, Anthony, do you have anything to add?
I mean, I think it's just like I said at the start of this call, I really believe that I have one of the most fun jobs in this industry. And anytime I can get on to a call like this and help tell the story and listen to one of our great customers tell their story of how our products are helping them grow and evolve their business and lead an industry, it's fun. And, just thank you to Steve and thank you to Becca and the Parade team for hosting this and having this conversation with us today.
Yeah.
Thank you both. And I'll piggyback off that, Becca. Your team at Parade and making sure that we're set up for success. That's a huge thing for us that we try to do for like our employees and vendors. We think about that all day. How can we set people up for success? You and your team have made sure that we are set up for success. And Turvo likewise, in making sure that the integration stays stable and that information's flowing the way that it should. It's really cool to have when you do build a tech stack and you realize the partners that are actually willing to make sure that things are doing what they're promised to do. That's how you found the right partner. Is one I'm sure you want to be. So I appreciate it. We appreciate it.
The best part of the job.
That's right. I bet. Well, good. Thanks for the time.